Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be doing another tag video. I've been trying to do some more of these lately, and this is another one that I've seen around a lot. I wasn't specifically tagged in this, but it looked like a fun one, and a lot of my BookTube friends were doing it, so I thought I would give it a go as well, and that is the Fantasy Character Tropes tag. This was originally created by Joanna Souza, and I'll link that down below as well, and like I said, I've seen a lot of people around doing this, so I thought it would be a fun one to do. So with no further ado, let's get into it. So the first prompt is The Chosen One, a book you recommend to everyone. So I recommend books a lot, and quite a bit. So I was trying to not just go with some go-tos. I've mentioned things like, of course, The Wheel of Time or Good Omens are books that I think that almost anyone should read, but I tried to switch it up just a little bit, especially since I found myself recommending this series quite a lot. That is Discworld by Terry Pratchett in general. Now I'm holding up Guards because it's amazing, but Discworld in general I've recommended to so many people. It's, for one, the books are really good. They're very fun, but they're also like really great if you just need a palate cleanser. Maybe you've been reading some heavy stuff, you need a break, or you're kind of feeling like you're in a reading slump, or you just feel like changing it up, or just need a good laugh. There are so many different Discworld books. There are so many different like sub-series within. So there's one for almost anyone. I've read the first 10 or 11 so far, and I've really enjoyed just about all of them, and they just keep getting better. So I'm super excited to keep going. But this is one I found myself a lot, especially lately, recommending to people. So I thought that was a good answer for that particular question. The second prompt is The Secret Heir, and that is a book that surprised you, turned out to be more than you expected. So that's happened. I do tend to kind of just like pick up random books a bit sometimes, and so there's books that I got over the years, like secondhand stores or like used. They just kind of picked up, and I've gotten pretty lucky with some books like this. I've mentioned, like, for example, Chronicles of Thomas Covenant is something I just randomly picked up that I really, really enjoyed. And there's been others, too, that I've just kind of grabbed and ended up really, really liking. And the one I wanted to go with, though, which if you've watched my channel for a while, is probably no surprise, because I have to go with this one because it is really the book that I had no expectations for. I knew nothing about it, never read the author, and I love the series so much so far. And so that's going to be King's Dragon by Kate Elliott, the first book in Crown of Stars. I know I probably talk about Crown of Stars too much, but no one else is talking about Crown of Stars, so I feel like I have to. And I read this book, I really, really liked it. And I was just surprised to find a book just randomly. And I mean, this is started being released in the 90s. It's been around a while. And I kept seeing random books in the series at my half-price books, so I decided to pick it up. It took a while for me to actually get the first book in a good copy. I ended up getting the whole series in, they're like the book club hardcover, so they're a little shorter. But I really like this. I read the second book and I loved it. And I'm almost done with the fourth book now, and it's just such a strong series. And it might end up being one of my favorite series by the time I get to the ending. So I was not expecting at all to get that much out of it, and so I felt like I still had to answer it, even though you've probably heard me talk about it before if you've seen my videos. It's so good. Just everyone go read Crown of Stars. Just read it so that I can talk to you about it more. All right, the next prompt is The Evil Overlord, and that's a book that was poorly executed or a book that just kind of fell flat. So most recently for me, the book that just fell really flat, which I was not expecting, was Stardust by Neil Gaiman. I had really enjoyed the Gaiman books that I've read, and I still absolutely plan on reading more of his work, but this one really just didn't do it for me. And flat is very much how it felt. It just didn't have that kind of something extra, that vibrancy, that life of prose that I had become accustomed to with Neil Gaiman. And so I was pretty disappointed with this one. It just really, like, it wasn't terrible, but I just didn't really care. I feel like the movie, it was a lot more fleshed out, and he was involved with the movie, so I think it's just like he figured out how to make it better, but on its own, it didn't do it for me. So definitely a one that fell pretty flat. Next is The Reluctant Hero, a book you are not sure you want to read. This is another one where I've probably mentioned this before in other tags or other videos, but it is just really true. It's a book I'd heard a lot of good things about, so I was planning on reading really soon after I bought it, which was well over a year ago, and then I started hearing really mixed things, and I started hearing bad things too, and so seems to be a really hit or miss one, and it's been on my shelf for quite some time, and that is The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. This book, it sounds like it's kind of one of those love-hate books. You know, it either works for you or it doesn't. And it has sat on my shelf for quite a while now because I just haven't wanted to push forward because it's not a short book. There's always so many things I want to read. And just with all the mixed things I've heard, I've been hesitant to start this one. So I will read it eventually. I absolutely will. It's probably just not going to be soon because I am very reluctant to read it. Then next up we have Lucky Novice, a great debut. So this one was hard because I thought of so many different options that I could have talked about here, like Malice or like The Shadow of What Was Lost. It's just there's several different books that were debuts that I really enjoyed and thought started a really good series. But I went with one that I just feel like doesn't get talked about quite enough. Even though it's good and like in the right circles, it's very popular, but it's not super well loved necessarily everywhere. But that is Prince of Thorns by Mark Lawrence. This is the first book in the Broken Empire trilogy. I really enjoyed this book, and I really liked this trilogy and the trilogy after it, the Red Queen's War trilogy. I thought they were really good, but this book, even though Mark Lawrence, you can definitely see in his first 6 books alone, there is so much improvement, but he started out really well here. It was an interesting story, it had good prose, and seeing him improve was great, but I thought he did a great job with immediately making me want to continue reading his books, just from this very first one, Prince of Thorns. I know it's grimdarky, and a lot of people don't like Jorg, uh, but it's definitely, in my opinion, worth a read if you can kind of get past the material. It looks at a lot, does a really interesting character study, and I quite enjoyed it. All right, next, The Mentor, a book that is formative to your life. Now, this one's also probably not a huge surprise, and I'm pretty sure this is what Andrew said too, and so I tried to think of something else. But really, thinking of formative books, the only other things I could say is I read Prydain very, very young, but I actually didn't really remember a ton about it. And then I read some of the Dragonlance books pretty young too, because I really, really enjoyed fantasy, and there were very few fantasy options around. So those definitely played a role in making me really want to seek out more fantasy because I very much enjoyed those. But really, the book that was most formative and that was with me through a long chunk of my life would be The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, the first book of Wheel of Time. I know I probably talk about Wheel of Time too much, but this series, I first picked this book up when I was 11 years old from my public library. I still remember they had this and The Dragon Reborn, which is book 3. They did not have the second book. So I had to interlibrary loan this whole series from my local public library. And they ended up keeping, after they got The Great Hunt, they kept a copy so that they had the first 3. But then I would have to read one, and then I would immediately have them get me the next one. And so it took a long time for me to finish it. I couldn't stop reading the books, but I had to, wait. And then like I'd get the call that the book was in, and take my bike, go to the library, and get the next Wheel of Time book. Man, this series was just everything to me when I was younger, and it still is my all-time favorite. I read and reread this so many times when I was younger. I've reread it several times over the years as well. I mean, I've done the whole series over a dozen times easily. So the most formative book by far, and also something that really affected the way I read fantasy because of the fact that I started Wheel of Time so young. I feel like a lot of stuff that was more like for my age group, I didn't read as much. And then going back to younger stuff, I think is honestly probably why I don't like YA that much, because even when I was younger, I started with adult fantasy and really, really enjoyed it. So going back to something that's for a younger audience, I think I don't have the nostalgia for a lot of that type of stuff that a lot of people do, because I kind of skipped that part with going straight into the Wheel of Time, which I don't regret because I love the Wheel of Time. But yeah, that definitely had a huge impact on me in general, and especially my reading and fantasy reading. All right, finally, The Animal Companion, a book that broke your heart or a book that makes you smile. Everyone else I've seen of this did the make you smile, so I'm like, screw it, we're going to go with the broke your heart. There were also a couple of options I could have chosen, but man, I had to go with the big one, and that is Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb, which is book 2 of the Farseer trilogy. And man, this book broke me toward the end. It is an amazing book, and it is fantastic, but it is very heartbreaking. And the third book as well, just like I couldn't read anything after I finished the Farseer trilogy for a few days because I just had to kind of let it like marinate and just kind of sit. Because it was just so many things that are just like crushing happens. But this book especially was just, it was pretty rough. And it is a wonderful book. And I love Robin Hobb and I love the Farseer trilogy. But you want a heartbreaking book, read Farseer trilogy. Yeah, just if you've read it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And there's lots of moments, but especially the end of this book, the things that happen are just, man. Oh, all right. So that is the fantasy character tropes tag and my answers for that tag. So I'm trying to be better about tagging people. If you've seen one of my other recent tags, I probably mentioned that. Usually I would just say like, oh, if you see this, do it. And if you do see this and want to do it, absolutely still do it. But I've told myself I do want to get better at actually doing, like actually tagging people. So I do have some people to tag. I'm gonna tag a few people here. The first one is gonna be Kevin Rothert, and this is a channel that I found fairly recently, and he's got some kind of comedic different videos and looking at different just like tropes and other things too. So I thought of him when I was doing this tag. I think he would have an interesting take on it. So I'm gonna tag him. Next, I'm gonna tag a channel I just found out, which is Dominique Carrier, which I hope I'm pronouncing right. Sorry if I'm not. But this is a brand new channel that I just found very recently. It's kind of a newer channel in general, and I really enjoyed her videos that I've seen so far, and she just seemed to have a lot of really, really great opinions. So I thought this would be a good idea to see the tag and then see how she answers all these questions and find out some more there. And then I wanted to also tag BookBuds because honestly, it's just because I haven't seen BookBuds do a tag in a couple of weeks, and I want to see BookBuds do another tag. So I'm tagging BookBuds as well. They're a lot of fun. I always really enjoy their tag videos that they do, and they always have some very unique answers. So I'm excited to see them do it as well. So those are the people I'm tagging. Once again, if you see this and you want to do it, absolutely do the tag. Let me know when you do the tag because I'd love to watch your video. But that is it for this one from me. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like. Of course, check the link in the description for a link to the Wizardly Duo Discord. And of course, if you want to see more of my content, make sure to subscribe.